the Rotorua Lakes Council. It's our pleasure today to be joined by the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and I want to acknowledge our councillors, Kevin Winters, Lyle Thurston, and also Te Taru White. It's fantastic to have you here. Also, of course, our Chief Executive, Fiona, and staff that have joined you. We appreciate you coming along and being able to share some information with us. Rotorua Lakes councillors, this will be a workshop where we won't necessarily require standing orders. I think it'll be a great idea for us to be able to ask as many questions and have a discussion both ways as well. But I do remind everyone that the workshop is being live streamed and will be available on our YouTube account. And the only apologies that I have, our Chief Executive is just walking down the hallway, but Councillor Lani Kiriopa will be joining slightly later by Zoom. And I do expect Councillor Maxwell to be here soon. Just checking there were no apologies to be noted from the Regional Council.
As Chairman Leader.
Oh yes, of course. Thank you very much. Okay, so before we get underway, we'll open up with a karakia. I might just ask Councillor Waru if you would mind opening us up with a karakia. Thank you.
Mai nero. Kanu te mihi kia koutou kai te kauni hera aro he, te mona toi moana, nau mai haere mai. Hoki mai ki tēnei e kai ngō koutou. Hoi no kei nui tātou. Te hono re he korore ki te atua he mau ngā rongo ki te whenua he whakaaro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa amin. Hanga mai rai te atua he ngā kou hau ki roto ki tēnā ki te nō mātau. Ara i tia mana ki tia mai mātau roto i a mātau mahi katoa. E pai hoa tēnei mātau au punonga tuku whakawheta atu ni kia koe. Hoi hoki tō mātau kai whakaora. Amin.
Amine, ngā mihi nui, Councillor Waru, and Councillor Maxwell is just joining us now. Thank you. Just in time. And I do believe Councillor Patterson will be with us very shortly. Sorry, we have had a committee meeting this morning, so we're sort of all rushing back from lunch. But we appreciate you being here to go through the presentation. We'll hand over to you now, but I do just suggest, because councillors received this yesterday, perhaps maybe we'll just have a short break between each topic as an opportunity to answer questions then as we go through this together. But otherwise, we're in your hands. Thank you very much.
Kia ora tātou. I rā rangatira mai kui mai koroma tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Nō reira I māti ata te tau I whakakahi I manake, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. If you don't mind, I'll sit, Your Worship. As we said in our opening comments, we have an apology today from our chairman, who's been called away on urgent business. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Councillor White and Councillor Winters, who will be part of this presentation. We also have key members of staff here. And if I could just seek some guidance from you, we're primarily here to talk about tarawera and some fact corrections and some potential solutions going forward. But we have key staff here who are very capable to respond to your topics around Te Ruapeka Bay and the Utahina stream. So I know we've been allocated an hour and a half, and I don't think we're going to need an hour and a half. But if you wish, I think you should strike while the iron's hot and ask key staff and express your concerns and updates that you would like on Te Ruapeka Bay and the Utahina stream, if that's so wished by the council. Happy with that, Your Worship? Okay, this meeting today came about because we as politicians at Regional Council were very concerned about the high degree of misinformation and disinformation that was circulating in the community with regards to the Tarawera sewerage scheme. And we asked for this meeting to share with you some of our concerns and quite simply to do some fact checking. A lot of that information, as you know, and the comments and statements made pertain to your organisation, but there were 5 key facts that were incorrect that we felt that we needed to address in front of you, our colleagues. So having said that, we see this presentation breaking into sort of 3 parts. I'll cover the 5 facts that we would like to correct in terms of fact checking. And then my colleagues, led by Councillor Winters and Councillor White will lead into the rate swap solution, which I think by now you're very, very familiar with. And then I know my colleagues will then put before you some further potential solutions for you to consider. But can I just say in opening comments, we are committed as 3 individuals to working collaboratively with our colleagues in Rotorua. We put great value in the meetings that we have, be they formal or informal. And we are really here today in a spirit of good faith to share with you, and I know you will be addressing a lot of the concerns that have been labelled at you that are incorrect, but if we can just put before you what we believe needs to be clarified from our point of view. So the first slide up. So you've gone too far. Okay, fact number 1. This is one of 5, and this was directed primarily at us as the Regional Council, but we just wanted to stress that based on the comprehensive and robust scientific research and advice underpinning our lake water quality work, the Tarawera sewage scheme is the right thing to do. So many have questioned why is it being done and for what reasons, but we firmly are of the view, based on the science and the research, that it is the right thing to do long term for that community and for the wider Rotorua community and for us nationally. For this reason, the Tarawera sewage scheme is a key action in the Tarawera Lakes Restoration Plan adopted by the Rotorua Lakes Strategy Group Partnership in 2015. And I know my colleagues will talk in more detail about the strategy group, but it is a 3-legged stool that has quite considerable influence. And it's ourselves, yourselves, and the Te Arawa Lakes Trust. The strategy back then was developed in collaboration with the community, and I stress it was, and all other actions within it are fully implemented, including farm management across all of the 9 contributing catchments. That's pretty self-explanatory. Much has been made of the scheme and the reasons why, and how we came to land where we are today, but we do stress from our point of view, and I know you will agree, that it is a community solution and it doesn't leave any individuals or families out at Tarawera stranded. I know my colleagues will comment on septic tanks at Tarawera, but a large number of them do not meet modern standards of effluent disposal in sensitive lake catchments. And as mentioned there are some near 170 dwellings that fall into a pretty tricky category. And as is stated in the last paragraph, they are known to us, they are observed by us, but we're not in a position to share the names and addresses of those properties in terms of privacy for the individuals concerned. Fact number 3, we have Lake Tarawera and its catchments very much front of mind, and it definitely is a priority for the Rotorua Te Arawa Lakes Strategy Group, and of course they oversee the management of 12 Rotorua Te Arawa Lakes. And as I said in earlier comments, it is a 3-legged stool comprising ourselves, yourselves, and the Te Arawa Lakes Trust, and it is supported by the flight deck from the Ministry for the Environment. Much has been made of funding deeds in some of these missives that have been going out into the community, but the Tarawera Sewage Scheme has its own funding deed from the Crown of $6.5 million, and the Tarawera Sewage Scheme was progressed much later than the 2008 funding deed, which I know Councillor Winters in particular will make reference to. Fact number 4, we're nearly there, colleagues. As we all know, and we've laboured this point many, many times, all of the remaining funding in the Rotorua Te Arawa Lakes funding deed, which was signed in 2008, and I know my colleagues all reference the Right Honourable Helen Clark here, is allocated to achieving a sustainable nitrogen load for Lake Rotorua by 2032. And some of you around here would have been party to the signing of the Rotorua Agreement up on Rotorua Road with the Rotorua farmers. and also the integrated framework for Lake Rotorua, which you're all very, very familiar with. Much has been made of transferring funding to the Tarawera Sewerage Scheme from this deed. Work on those projects and associated commitments to those communities would be grossly affected if that was the case. And finally, the last fact, much has been made in recent days and weeks with regards to correspondence that emanated from the Ministry for the Environment, and copies of a 2017 letter have been circulated and are going around the community, which was confirming a $6.5 million subsidy to the Tarawera scheme. It is not the legal binding document as part of the funding deed, and the Bay of Plenty Regional Council was not a party to that letter. And I think our Chief Executive, Fiona, may make some appropriate comments here, but that is something to be very aware of, because much has been made of that 2017 letter from MFE to RLC in social media. Following that letter, the necessary Consultative Local Government Act budget setting processes were closely followed before the legally binding signatories only funding deed was finalised in 2022. And as you know, we agreed to meet your contribution of $750,000 as a grant to the Tarawera Sewerage Scheme. And I stress again, and my colleagues will mention this in their few words, and likewise our Chief Executive, but I stress there is no government requirement for the Regional Council to provide further funding to the Tarawera Sewerage Scheme. So what I would like to lead into now is some positive way forwards. Many of these suggestions have already been made to you, and I know you're fully appraised of them, but I'll pass over to my colleagues. First off, Councillor Winters.
Thank you. Lyle, did you just want to pause it there, Tanya, for questions, clarification, because I think these fact corrections are really important going forward in terms of getting all of the community on board for Tarawera. Can I take you all back to about 2006? I know it's a long time ago, but I was mayor at the time, and that's when ourselves, RDC, Regional Council and the Te Aroha Māori Trust Board, as it was, were negotiating with the Crown for this funding deed in 2006. And we originally costed out all the programs, all the initiatives, at about $200 million for everything on the 12 lakes we wanted to do in 2006. So we went to the Crown and said, how about a 50-50, 100 million from the Crown and 50 million each from Regional Council and RDC to make up that 200 million pot. Helen Clark subsequently came back and said, I'll give you 72 million for 4. And that was the original start of the funding deed for the 4 lakes. Now we know Lake Tarawera wasn't part of that funding deed. And yes, I signed that funding document back in 2008, but I think it's really important to put it into hindsight of what we were going for back in 2006. And it was Helen Clark's decision. And I think that's a really important point to make. It was her call, her and the Minister of Finance at the time, Michael Cullen, made the calls. And I think that really needs to be stressed, Madam Chair. It was Helen's decision. It wasn't because of anything this community had done. She just saw that the 4 lakes, Rotoiti, Rotorua, Rotoehu and Okirika, were the key lakes at that time. We've subsequently moved on. We've done a lot of work, and now we're coming back to the other lakes that are outside the funding deed. Yes, Rotorua got its own funding arrangement of 4.6 million, ballpark figure, from the Ministry of Health grant. It wasn't through this funding deed. And the other one was Tarawera got 6.5 million from the Freshwater Improvement Fund. That's its own funding deed. So I think we need to clarify the air in terms of where the money came from and what it was for. Lake Rotorua is not a deed funded lake. The 10 million that RDC has borrowed from the incentive scheme, I don't know whether it's in your bank account yet, Tanya, but we signed all the documents some time ago. Is it there? Cool. It's good. The $10 million that you received from the incentive scheme is a loan. And yes, it was cross-purpose to Rotorua scheme, but it does not mean that Rotorua is a deed-funded lake. That is a loan to be paid back. It is not a grant. And I think that needs to be clarified too, because there's a lot of misconceptions around that. So happy to take any questions, Madam Chair, on the 5 facts. And then I'll come to my little presentation as well.
Thank you very much for the information so far. We'll start with Councillor Patterson, Lee and then Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, and thank you very much for your presentation to date so far. Just a question following up the point you raised that Helen Clark made the decision on those 4 lakes. What information did she base that on?
Oh, that was probably about 2 years of work that the strategy committee, it was a strategy committee at the time because the Lakes Settlement Act hadn't been enacted yet. The lake beds had not been transferred back to Te Aroha Lakes. So we were a committee, we weren't a group. So we did a whole lot of work in terms of the restoration programs, initiatives that were needed to restore the quality of the lakes so that when they were given back to Te Aroha as part of the Lakes Settlement Act, they were in the condition that Te Aroha wanted them in. And it goes right back to what they were in the 1960s. And so the work we did in that initial discussion was the Crown, this is what we think it's going to cost in terms of the restoration program in total for the 12 lakes. That was all of them.
So, subsequent question. So, the information that you provided to the government,
to the Crown, yes.
To the Crown,
Yep.
Included information on Tarawera and the water quality issues there?
Yep. All the lakes and all their TLIs and the TLIs we wanted into the future. So we projected forward.
So, last question on that issue, then that says that the 4 lakes that were given the green light were in worse condition than Tarawera. Is that correct?
Oh, look, I can't comment on why Helen Clark made that decision.
So they didn't justify that to you as to why we've only chosen these 4?
No.
We probably appreciate there has been quite some time passed between those discussions. So, yeah, well, we appreciate, Councillor White, that you're able to share your experience and knowledge of it. It might be a little bit difficult.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mayor Tapsell. And thank you, gentlemen, for taking the proactive step of coming to us and trying to clear up some of this confusion that's out there. I appreciate the opportunity to ask some of these questions and hopefully we can make some progress. If we could go back to fact 1 on the board there, you talk about robust scientific research. So I've been, and I suppose other elected members here have been provided with information from Tarawera resident Rohan Wells, who I understand spent 30 years working in this arena. And he sent us a screenshot, which I believe was from the Rotorua Council website. And the Rotorua Council website screenshot claimed that the residents of Tarawera were causing some 8.5% of the nutrients going into the lake. He asserts that, in fact, it's not even a tenth of that, not even 0.8%. He asserts it's even a quarter of that figure, so we're talking like 0.2% of the nutrients going into the lake. So he would assert that once we get the sewage reticulation scheme up and running, we're not actually going to see any measurable improvement in lake water quality, which I understand is the whole premise for the scheme. How do you respond to Mr. Wells's assertions?
Oh, I don't want to get into a tit for tat today, Robert. But our action plans for Tarawera were based on, we started a University of Waikato chair. And I'm looking at my colleagues about how long ago that was. Probably Professor David Hamilton. When did we employ him as Professor of from Waikato? It'd be good decade ago. And he gave us a whole lot of, he brought forward a lot of science in that 10 years in terms of the health of all our lakes. So that's where the action plan was developed for Tarawera, and the number one action plan for Tarawera at the top of the list, with a whole lot of community consultation, was the sewage scheme. That was the number one action plan.
My question was pertaining to the science.
And we've had a decade of science from the University of Waikato. We've had Professor David Hamilton and now Professor Dennis Ostendowski, who is leading the research for all our lakes to give us the best scientific analysis available. Now, the University of Waikato then employs a whole lot of PhD students to do research on our lakes. There's probably about 40 students, 40 PhD students doing research on our lakes. Very specific research, but we are confident that the scientific analysis that we've had coming forward from the University of Waikato, Professor David Hamilton and Professor Dennis Ostendowski, is robust. And that's what's we're relying on. Now, I'm not going to get into a tit for tat of who said what said, Robert, but I just think we've had some really good scientific analysis for some time to base our evidence on that.
Mr. Wells also provided to us a memorandum from one of the University of Waikato professors, which seemed to indicate that the figures that Bay Plenty Regional Council relied upon were not actually accurate, and some of the testing methods that you used from 2010 onwards was made the water quality look actually worse than it really was.
I think that's challenging the gentleman's professionalism, but I don't think it's appropriate for us to get into that discussion here. But at the end of the day, we can only base our decisions on science and the research that's presented to us. As Councillor Winters said, we fund the chair. You may say we've got a vested interest, but it's all very arm's length. We fund the chair of water science at the University of Waikato, and so far their information and advice has been exemplary. So, but if you've got specific questions you'd like answered, we will certainly put them back to the professors that we have a close association with at the university. Happy to.
Well, okay, let's shift to the Lake Okaraka in that case, which is now a reticulation scheme that's been up and running for 15 years. And the latest TLI that I've seen on
Sorry,
Lake
Councillor Lee,
Okaraka,
does this have relevance to Lake Tarawera, which we're discussing currently?
Yes, of course it has relevance, Your Worship, because otherwise I wouldn't be asking the question.
I don't know about that. Could you put the...
So, we would be there by now. So, the relevance is that scheme has been up and running for 15 years, and that lake, which is a much smaller lake than Lake Tarawera, has not seen any improvement in lake water quality. So why should the Tarawera residents have confidence that putting in the reticulation scheme will measurably improve lake water quality?
So one of the first things that Professor David Hamilton said to us in lake restoration for all our lakes is, this is a intergenerational journey. This is not going to solve it in 1 year or 2 years. This is intergenerational, Robert. We've been going 20 years. There's another generation of people to do work on the lakes at the moment. Are you telling me now that we should take the sewerage scheme out of Lake Okereke? Seriously? Seriously?
No, that would be putting words in my mouth, Councillor
Oh, well, I
Winters.
wouldn't want to do that.
I'm not suggesting that at all. It's just that you've asserted that the science is trustworthy. So I was looking for answers to the science questions, not the where to from here kind of questions. I'll leave it at that for the time being, Madam, if you would.
But
I do have other questions, but we'll let some other councillors have a crack.
Yeah, we will move on. But I do reject the nature of your questions and apologise to the Regional Council. Councillors, there is, as mentioned, decades of information and research, not only from the councils, but also fantastic community organisations like the Lakes Water Quality Society, and of course through the partnership we have with the Rotorua Lakes Strategy. So
and there's a gentleman out there by the name of Terry Beckett who has been advising us all the way through his research.
Thank you. There's a significant amount of research and evidence, and there is no legitimate evidence to suggest that decisions have been made falsely, as far as I'm aware. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll go
Point of order.
We're actually not on standing orders, but do you have a point?
Yes. Again, you seem to be putting words in my mouth.
No, I wasn't actually. They were my words. We'll move on. Thank you. Councillor Brown, Councillor Kaifong, and then Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Worship. Just going back to fact one, this is not solely about TLI. This is about other aspects of the lake health. I just wondered whether, I didn't get that in the introduction, I just wonder whether you might like to expand on the difference between TLI and the other measures.
Putting in sewage for Tarawera is twofold. One is water quality, the other is public health. We know there is extensive E. coli in that water out there. The tests have been done. Some of them are off the chart, and you think that's not good enough. Where's it coming from? Yes, it's animal, but it's also human.
Thank you. I think that clarification is important for the wider community to understand. It's not just about TLI. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kaifong.
Thank you, Chair. Just fact 4 slide. So as I understand it, that objective was to remove excess nitrogen to Lake Rotorua by 2032, sorry. So that, are we likely to meet that objective target?
Kia ora koutou, ko Helen Craig tōku ingoa. We are not on track to meet that at the moment, so we're looking at the incentives aspect of that. So we've talked about the integrated framework in our presentation up there, which is the rules component, the incentive component, so the voluntary component, and some engineering solutions. So at the moment, the rules is on track, but those other voluntary components, we need to augment our work there to change it up. We've got some of the target, but not all of it. So we've been working with Rotorua Lakes Council staff to look at the possibility of purchasing and retiring land in that catchment. And yeah, we are still pursuing that as a possible alternative. Yeah.
So based on that, do you think that the funding remaining is actually assigned to the most effective programs if we're looking at that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, yes, I do. Yeah, it's needed. It's needed and more to achieve that target. So I do think that it is assigned to the right programs.
Okay, and then can I just fact check slide 5? So if we go back to the original rationale, was that there would be properties out there that wouldn't comply with the offset systems, so that was a necessity for the council to put in the reticulation system, and I think that that's been agreed by the Regional Council just from the other slides that have been put up. So based on the, I suppose, importance of that scheme to enable those properties to be fully compliant, is a $750,000 contribution in terms of the overall cost of the scheme a fair proportion for the Regional Council to be funding?
That's part of the presentation today, Sandra, that I'll talk about later on.
Okay, we'll come back to that question later.
Thanks.
Did you have any further questions? Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Can I just go back to Sandra's comment about Plan Change 10 on Lake Rotorua? That's the integrated framework that we talk about. to get a sustainable loading for Lake Rotorua. Yes, the incentive scheme nitrogen buyback, we're about halfway. We've got till 2032 to do it. But you have to realise there's been about 5,000 hectares of land use change in the Rotorua catchment, Lake Rotorua catchment, since we started. 5,000 hectares. That's huge in terms of an overall catchment, in terms of the nitrogen input into Lake Rotorua. So, I mean, as I said at the start, this is an intergenerational journey, and you've got to take farmers and landowners with you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, very much for your time today. Much appreciated. I again also had a follow-up question about the 750, but we'll hold fire till Councillor Winters talks about that later. Just in regards to Fact 2, could I just clarify with you, sorry, just in terms of the wording that you've put on your presentation here, it is estimated that due to site constraints there are 169 dwellings. So can I ask, if I was one of those 169, and I'm not asking you to identify, as you put at the bottom there, that's perfectly understandable. If I was one of those 169, how detailed was that estimation? Like, would someone have come to my property and done a check?
Yes, in some of those examples, yes. In about 30% of the examples, someone would have come to your property and done a check. On the rest of the example, that was gave enough of a data check to do the rest on a desktop basis. So some of those people will know, some of them won't necessarily.
Sorry, Helen, do you mind repeating those numbers again for me?
So from memory, about 30% would have had a site visit to check the desktop analysis. You're looking at kind of soil, steepness of the land, site size in terms of where you could put disposal areas, because often, you know, your disposal area is compromised by a driveway or car parking and things like that. You can't put an effluent disposal system in those areas. So in about 30% of those cases, there was some site inspections to test the assumptions, and then for the rest, they were based on desktop analyses.
Okay, thank you. So I've had a couple of people out in that area say, I found out that I was one of the estimated 169, but never received. So that's possible, that's plausible?
Yeah. So some were checked on site, some weren't. Yeah. Okay.
So if I was say to 169, someone said you definitely can't, and obviously there's houses right beside me, or further uphill, that's the sort of thing where you're saying, well, we wouldn't go and see every single person.
Yeah.
We would assume that
Yeah, if they've got the same site characteristics.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just checking if there are any further questions. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's turn to Fact 2, if it looks like we're already there. So, have you approached the Privacy Commissioner about the dilemma about the 169 properties? Because I understand there have been information requests made of the councils to find out which properties these are. Again, this is a fundamental question concerning the scheme, because it's the premise upon which the scheme's been based, that these 169 properties need to be attended to.
Tēnā koutou katoa, I'm the Chief Executive of Bay of Plenty Regional Council. Yes, we are very comfortable with our approach. Our legal counsel has assured us in terms of ensuring the privacy of those individuals.
My question was, had you talked to the Privacy Commissioner?
We don't need to, because of the legal counsel and the opinions we have. We have not been approached by the Privacy Commissioner, and if we do, we're very happy to answer any questions that they have.
Okay. I don't know whether residents might like to explore that option. Fact 3. Tarawera has its own funding deed, which amounts to 6.5 million. For a scheme that's now over $30 million, that would seem rather insufficient, certainly compared to other schemes. Wasn't the original arrangement, and I'm referring to the funding deed as well as Helen Clark's speech, wasn't the original arrangement that central government would pay 50% of these schemes? The two councils seated here today would pay 25% of the schemes each. So at what point and why did the arrangements change that the residents would be expected to pay a significant portion of all of this?
You've sent me a copy of Helen Clark's speech, and I remember it well when she spoke at Otama Marae back in March 2008. She talked about the 4 deed-funded lakes. And it's in her speech, Robert, that she said this money is for the 4 deed-funded lakes, and she named them.
Yes, I'm familiar with that. So my question was actually aimed at the 4 deeded lakes. When did the residents become required to contribute on a significant basis to these schemes when the original arrangement was 50, 25, 25 between the councils and the central government?
Well, for the 4 deed-funded lakes, it was 50% for the Crown. RDC at the time had a $1,500 per household subsidy, and the consumers, the households, were expected to fund the balance.
That's not what the funding deed says, though, is it?
Well, we do catchment work, Robert. We don't fund sewage schemes. You guys do. You operate them. You fund them.
But the regional council was required under that arrangement to pay 25%, was it not?
I'll just ask the Chief Executive back in the Regional Council.
So there are a variety of projects that were included. Some of them were the responsibility of Bay of Plenty Regional Council and some responsibility of Rotorua Lakes Council. Rotorua Lakes Council is in the position of being responsible for funding reticulation schemes. Bay of Plenty Regional Council is the only regional council that has provided any funding to reticulation schemes in New Zealand. It made the decision many years ago to support the Ministry of Health with its funding, and so that's how it got into this business. But it's clearly the responsibility of Rotorua Lakes Council to fund reticulation schemes. So we look at these funding deeds, and particularly the one that the Regional Council is a party to. There are a range of projects in that program. Some of them were for Bay of Plenty to fund and some for RLC to fund.
But I've read the original funding deed, and the funding deed says that these reticulation schemes on the 4 priority lakes are 50% central government, 25% regional council, 25% district council.
That's not how we read the funding deed.
Work program, Madam Chair, we do catchment work. RDC does sewage schemes. That's how the funding deed worked.
Thank you. And I do acknowledge that through the Rotorua Lakes Strategy Group, that is actually where the decisions are made and the funding is therefore allocated on an ongoing basis. So also acknowledge that the deed was a point in time when it was signed, but there's been significant work, and fortunately that has also been adaptable to be suitable projects for the times. Do you have any final questions before I move on?
So just going back to Councillor Brown's assertion about the relevance of TLI, I don't believe E. coli is a measurement referred to in the funding deed. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the funding deed is specifically targeted at TLI, is it not?
That's probably a level of detail you can read for yourself in the deed. Do you have a point to the question you're trying to get at?
Well, the point is either Councillor Brown is correct on this, that E. coli is relevant, or I'm correct and it's not relevant to the funding deed.
Well, it's not about who's right and who's wrong, Councillor Lee. It's about coming together, which we appreciate with the Regional Council, to make sure that the most correct and accurate information is available for our community. Councillor Waddy, you had a question?
Tēnā koe, te manukura, tēnā koutou. Well, a lot of questions have been going on, but my question is really around the point where the legislation or the rules changed in terms of the septic tanks and the requirements there. When did that happen, I suppose, that we find ourselves in this position that we're in now?
So in 2017, the Regional Council put in an offset plan, and that included provisions for maintenance zones and for future reticulation areas. It also required standards in terms of on-site effluent treatment standards. So that is the rules that are governing what happens. For this community, it was presumed it would be reticulated, and so the Regional Council has not taken action in terms of non-compliance at this point in time.
Tēnā koe, Fiona. So with the change, did that not give, I suppose, any flex within current funding arrangements or funding policy within the Regional Council whereby we could increase or anything like that to go, well, to be more aligned, I suppose, with the change, because that fundamentally changes the whole cope-up of the deed, does it not?
The Regional Council doesn't fund reticulation schemes, so it's not the responsibility of the Regional Council. It has provided, through its long-term plan, the $750,000 contribution to this community. That was based on submissions to the long-term plan, and the Council at the time decided on $750,000. But it is not the responsibility of the Regional Council to fund reticulation schemes.
Okay, even when it was, well, we find ourselves in this position we're in now because of a particular piece of legislation that requires us to do so through the Regional Council. Is there no flex at all? Just a question.
Yeah, I suppose many of us at the Rotorua Lakes Council have received that feedback from the community who are quite confused that when they understand or learn that it's due to, as mentioned, changes from the Regional Council, but they're not seeing that the Regional Council is further financially supporting the scheme. So I will just tautoko that that is feedback that we've been consistently getting as well. Although, of course, we do appreciate the funding that has been allocated, and I don't think it has been understood about what the roles and responsibilities are of Regional Council. I just have a quick question on that, though. When you say it's not the job of a Regional Council, is that is that your opinion, or is that within the mandate that you have? I'm presuming it's under the Local Government Act that we also go under. I'm just trying to, is that a legislative mandate or an opinion? And I do note that many communities in the country are requiring better waters. It's a massive conversation, the local water done well, and so there may be a point where regional councils and local councils work together more to fund the very essential water assets. But is there anything further you're able to add?
Yes, so at the last long-term plan, there were several communities around this region who did seek funding from the Regional Council for reticulation and other infrastructure. They were declined because of the financial position of the Regional Council. So it is not uncommon for communities to submit for funding, but the decisions in this long-term plan was not to increase funding for reticulation schemes in this region. And that wasn't just Lake Tarawera. There are other communities who are seeking funding from the Regional Council.
Thank you. And so is it a fact, I suppose, that regional councils can't fund? That's why they haven't. It is very, I understand the argument that no other regional councils have done that, but no other regional councils have a district with 18 lakes and 4 dead lakes, but many, lakes that are national, really of national significance to New Zealand as well. So I put that question again one more time. Is it because you're not able to, or you can't, or you won't? I suppose that the call has been very clear from a number, which I appreciate. You also get the submissions and the feedback from the community. We receive it many, many times. Yeah, the community just, I suppose, wants to understand why not, which they also don't get the opportunity in submissions, which is just a one-way dialogue requesting help.
So just one final comment from me. This was deliberated by the Regional Council in its last long-term plan, given the requests. The Council declined to put any funding into reticulation schemes across the region. It did direct staff to do a water quality funding policy in the future, but that required the local waters done well to be implemented first. So that's currently not being progressed until local waters done well is progressed, because there may be changes in terms of who owns assets and such like. So to be clear, they did receive a number of submissions in the last long-term plan. They deliberated on those submissions. They chose not to fund reticulation schemes, but have agreed to look at a future water quality funding policy after local waters done well is implemented.
Your Worship, you're putting forward a good case for unitaries, dare I say.
Sorry, what?
I just said you're putting forward a good case for unitaries, but can I suggest we move forward with regards to some possible solutions? One you're fully appraised of, and the other one is something we'd like to put on the table today.
Yeah, thank you. I will take two more questions from people who have asked, but thank you for that response from the Chief Executive. I think what I'm hearing is a choice to not fund, and I think that is something that not only we need to talk further as councils, but perhaps we could also work together to better advocate for more funding from central government. I know our district has been the receiver of significant infrastructure acceleration funding that has assisted with water assets, and so potentially that is something that we can do again to see our lakes restored and enhanced. I'll take two more questions. We've got Councillor O'Brien and then Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Fiona, for your comments. Could I just reflect on the fact 3 at the very bottom there? The Rotorua sewage scheme was progressed much later than the 2008 funding feed. Could I just confirm the 2008 funding deed, that was the original one that identified the 4 lakes, is that correct? Thank you. Is it correct that there's been at least 2 or 3, I would accept some minor amendments, including recently, of that agreement, and I presume the latest one will be surrounding the $10 million loan. So there has been ample opportunity for those variations to look at changes. If everyone, if the three partners had agreed to it.
Yeah. Kia ora koutou. So there has been 3 variations to the 2008 deed. Those first 2 were largely just around Schedule 2 of the deed, so that's about timing of payments. They didn't fundamentally change the contents of the deed. The most recent one, again, is really around Schedule 2 of the deed, which is the timing of payments and who receives them. So that's around the $10 million that we've talked about. And some other ancillary changes around that. And MFE was very clear in that when we were changing the deed that they don't have appetite to change it fundamentally, that it was just to make those changes to make the deed work, if you like, for the program. So it wasn't around changing the lakes that were included. It was about the timing of payments and who receives the money.
Thank you for that answer. So could you confirm then that at any time did we seek a major change?
No, not to my knowledge, and I've been here for 10 years and we've never sought a major change. The most major one is that most recent one. Thank you.
So when we say the Rotorua sewage scheme was progressed, I fully accept that, but we have had an opportunity, including currently with the $10 million, there was an opportunity for us to advocate then, was there not? Again, with the agreement of the 3 partners.
Well, Strategy Group didn't ask to do that, so it wasn't pursued, but MFE were very clear that there wasn't an appetite for for significant change to the deed. So that's the message I got from them.
And we take that on board, but there has been commentary captured in the minutes where Tarawera's status has been discussed previously.
And we have a letter from Minister Hoggard, Associate Minister for the Environment, saying quite categorically there is no more money for the Rotorua Lakes program.
Okay, thank you.
That was this year.
Thank you. Second part, if I may, just to finish off. When you say that there's no money left to, unfortunately, be able to fund reticulation, how does that then explain where you've been able to eliminate $4 million from your Lakes Activity Fund? If on one hand you don't have the money, but on another hand you're eliminating income, how does that match up?
Yeah.
I think we're just about to go into that, aren't we?
I think
so
we are too.
We'll hold that question for just the next following slides, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Worship. And finally, could I just ask, you say you don't fund reticulation schemes. I don't think we're asking you to fund. What we can't understand in some cases is why you've given a $750,000 grant, which apparently you don't do, but you've done it. What we're questioning is whether that amount could be increased to help find a group solution to help the people of Tarawera. So when you say we're not asking you to fund reticulation, we've already done that. What we're asking for is for an increase in your support.
So here's two options, Madam Chair.
Thank you. If you just want to hold that thought, I'll take one final question, final question from Councillor Lee on Tarawera, and then we'll go on to this.
If you don't mind, Your Worship, just so I can say that, I'm just following on from what Councillor Waru says, we find it very difficult that we're implementing a system based on your change of your rules to bring in a solution. Unfortunately, the OSEP wasn't possible. Reticulation is the only sensible opportunity by the looks of it, what you've said there, the properties that can't have it. All we're seeking is for a better case for the people of Tarawera. So thank you for that. Thank you, Your Worship.
I think we'll just take that as feedback. Thank you. And final question from Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mayor Tapsell, and thank you for your line of question towards the Regional Council's obligations. Thanks to Tracy McLeod, who's in the public gallery. She's provided me with a copy of the 2008 funding deed, and at my last, I'd refer you to clause 10.1.1, which sets out the Regional Council's obligations under the terms of the funding deed. So this is the basis, Your Worship, not the Local Government Act or anything else, for the obligations of the Regional Council. So it says here, in each financial year, EBOP shall pay its contribution towards matching the Crown's contribution to the cost of the interventions described in the annual work programme. So how do you then say that you have that you are not obliged to participate in a reticulation scheme?
Okay. That's exactly right. So the annual work programme outlines the interventions, and of each intervention, the Crown subsidises 50%. For the interventions that are run by the District Council, they provide the other 50%. For the interventions that are run by the Regional Council, they provide the other 50%. That's the answer.
Okay, that's an answer. I'll leave it right there for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll hand back to you guys to take us through the remainder of the slides. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Your Worship. So I think it was Sir Henry van der Heyden presented to this forum a couple of weeks ago, and he was wanting solutions. So we have a couple of options available for RDC to consider in terms of solutions going forward for Tarawera and the other lakes, actually. So I think we've had some green room discussions about this in terms of a rates swap solution. We're calling it a rates swap. So Regional Council has made a decision that our lake enhancement rate that we have over the Rotorua residents of about $160 per year, we are progressively reducing that in 3 years' time to be zero. That collects about $5 million a year ballpark in terms of contribution from Rotorua residents to our lakes restoration program. That's only 50% of the budget, and the other 50% comes from the general rate. We have decided as a council that the general rate will pay that whole $10 million for the restoration rate of Rotorua. We think that's a fairer way to go. So, the rate swap solution, and this is a bit of a minefield of a chart to plot your way through, but it shows by the end of 10 years, if we go down the line of taking, and we've made the decision, Madam Chair, to reduce the restoration rate for Rotorua residents, there's about $31 million over 10 years that is potentially available to this district council to pick up in your lake enhancement rate. So taking that, so if I look at the next slide, and do I have a pointer on here, Rob? Is that the one? Oh, I think it's there. So this is the Rotorua average rate per resident. You see this year it's 23-24, next year it's 24-25. You'll see there's about 100, in the blue line, there's about $160 there per household, dropping down to, I can't see that figure, it's about half of it. And then progressively in the fourth year, that $160 is zero. We've made that decision. And so we think there's an opportunity for Rotorua District Council to pick up your lake enhancement rate to the equivalent of what we're reducing it. The net cost to Rotorua residents is the same. So that's an option for you guys going forward. It's about ballpark figure about $5 million per year, and that could be used to fund the $10 million loan that we have signed with you for the incentive scheme and or other things that you want to put money into. That's our first offer on the table, Madam Chair, for you to consider.
Would you like to take any questions on that now? Or?
Yep, do that one.
Councillor Waru.
Tēnā koe te manukura, tēnā anō koutou. I'm a practical thinker, so would it not just be easier for a regional council to continue doing what they're doing and just pass on? I'm talking optics here. Is that an option?
Well, you're accountable to your ratepayers for your spending. That's all I'll say.
As are you. So, I just sort of put it out there. Makes sense to me, easier, don't have to change a lot.
Just a query. I'm sure there would be, you may have received already, but there is and would be community concern that they would see the reduction in here. It visually appears, and they may have a perception, or it's easy to get the perception, that the regional council is reducing their contribution towards the Rotorua Lakes. I appreciate that Rotorua Lakes will now be looked after by the wider general rates, but I just want to check and ask the question, will there still be the same allocation of funding, if not more, to the Rotorua Lakes area? Is there any guarantee or reassurance for us in the Rotorua community in these changes?
I'll get the CEO to give you an absolute assurance.
Absolutely, yes. So the level of service is the same, and the funding comes from the full region.
And if you look at our lakes, the way they're used, we have people from Apotiki, Whakatane, Kawarau, Papamoa, Te Puki, Tauranga coming and playing in our backyard. It's only fair that everybody pays for the enhancement and beautification and restoration. So that's the big picture, Madam Chair. Yes, we have people from Waikato, but the benefits of the lakes is right across the bay.
Thank you very much. We've got a question from Councillor Patterson and then Councillor Kaifong.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Sorry,
because I was still there, I just wanted to make a comment that, this idea is good, but I just think there's a better way to do it, that's all. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as somebody who looks at this, if I was living in Kawerau and I saw Rotorua rates going down and my rates were going up, did you get any feedback from any of the other communities saying, what's the story with this? Why is Rotorua's going down and ours isn't? Just out of interest.
Work we do is targeted rate, Madam Chair. You'll see the green is general rates right across the bay. The blue is our urban river schemes. If you were in a Potiki and you had that river scheme on your backyard, you'd be concerned about that. That's what we do in flood protection schemes. You'll see there's a piece in there for the year action plan for Rotorua. That's a targeted rate for Rotorua for the work we do. And you'll see civil defence is spread right across the board as well as a targeted rate. So, yeah, isn't it good news for Rotorua residents? Your rates are going down from the Bay of Plenty Regional Council.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kaifong.
Yeah, just following on from that comment though, but you're actually asking us to put our rates up. So the question is, it's really a misnomer to call it a rates swap. This is something that you're saying that you've already consulted on. It wasn't something...
We've made the decision, yes. Yeah, we made the decision last year to do this.
Right. So at the time, there wasn't really a discussion with us about if you were to do that, what would we do? This has now been sold to us as a, we've decided this, so therefore, if you do something else which makes us increase our rates because you've decreased our rates, that's a swap. It's not a swap, it's a, I'm not sure what the correct word is, but
I think
definitely not a swap.
The rate swap phrase was coined out at Tarawera on anniversary weekend, and I thought, well, okay, call it whatever you like, but it's an opportunity for Rotorua Lakes Council to do this. You don't have to. We're just putting it on the table that we are doing it, and your call.
It's a space you can step into if you so wish politically.
I think probably just going back to Councillor Waru's point, if the Regional Council had just left the rates where they were and decided to just provide funding in a different way, we wouldn't be having this discussion here today. And I think it's really unfair to be putting it onto the Rotorua Lakes Council to make a decision where we're saying that we should increase our rates because you've decided to decrease your rates. The thing is that for the general member of the public, they don't see it like that.
Well, you've got an assurance from our CEO that the level of service, the spend that we do of about 10 million a year into Rotorua Lakes restoration program is not going to drop. It's just who pays. And we've decided as a council that it's the entire Bay of Plenty that pays, rather than just 50% Rotorua residents.
Thank you. And while we are talking rates right now, the reality of who pays what depends on what they're paying it for. And if there is additional funding that's required for the Rotorua Lakes, then I suppose the fairness question or the partnership question comes into play of should it be the Rotorua Council's responsibility to have to increase our rates when potentially it could be. I do note that and pleasantly surprised the rates are going down over time, as indicated in your long-term plans, but potentially that could be a question back to you on instead of asking us to increase our rates when we are going through quite difficult processes and decisions to ensure that our rates are kept as affordable as possible for our community, that perhaps also there's an opportunity for the Regional Council to actually look at an uplift so that we can complete the very necessary, very important work that's required to get our lakes to good water quality and in healthy swimmable conditions. So I suppose that's a question, but we'll take that as feedback anyway, that maybe there is an opportunity for the Regional Council to look at an uplift as well. So, sorry, did I see a hand down here? No? Did I see a hand over here? Are there any further questions on this part? No, thank you.
So our second potential solution for Tarawera is that we're prepared, and this is subject to our approval by our own regional council. It's on the table for your interest, an interest-free loan with the regional council to the tune of $4 million for Tarawera, payable within 2 years. That's on the table, and we would like feedback by the 21st, or by May 2025, to ensure it's in our annual plan. So that's on the table too, Tanya. It's an interest-free loan for 2 years. We'd add it to the 10 million in the sort of similar document type thing. So it's on the table.
Sorry, and can you just confirm, was that, are you saying 4 million?
Yep.
4 million, okay. Thank you. And
I think that was the figure that the Tarawera Sewerage Group were requesting, some sort of, and that would come into their 50% equation.
okay, thank you.
That would be the shortfall.
Thank you. The 10 million is a loan, but the final decision of where that's allocated goes back to the Rotorua Lakes Strategy Group, and so perhaps we'll look at those two things as two separate agreements.
But it's on the table.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for coming back to us with some solutions and with this offer. We'll take questions, starting with Councillor Lee.
Just a quick point of clarification on that. I seem to recall being previously told you weren't going to be consulting on an annual plan this year. Has that changed?
No, we're not consulting on an annual plan.
Okay, so what are we looking at here? Finalised by May 2025 to ensure provided for Regional Council's annual plan.
So our deliberations for our annual plan are in May, so we need to have an answer by May.
Oh, so you're doing an annual plan,
Yes,
but you're just not consulting
That's
on it?
right.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And if there are no major changes to the long-term plan for that year, then that's why a council would not, just for clarity, would not consult. Just checking if there are any further questions. Yep, Councillor Lee.
Yeah, just to follow up to that question, don't you have to consult the community on this proposal?
No. No, we don't.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Waru.
Just getting some clarification. So was that 4 million over 2 years, or was that 2 million over 4 years?
4 million over 2 years, interest-free.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for those two, shall we say, proposals. I'll just call them that at this stage. I suppose the thing for me, Your Worship, is at the end of the day, we're still paying it back, and it still doesn't address what Councillor Waru and I and others have said, is about you changed the rules, and now we've created a solution to try and match, for the betterment of all our lakes. You have given us $750,000 previously. You had a mechanism whereby you still were receiving $4 million. You've chosen to disestablish that opportunity, which you could have used.
No, correction. It's just where that $10 million for the restoration program comes from. We are not disestablishing it. It's just where it comes from, Madam Chair. It is from the general rate as opposed to a targeted rate.
Take that on board, but you still had the targeted rate that you could have used. And, we're talking about $4 million, Your Worship. I've heard people in that community mention $6 million. I've heard them say $10 million. So this thing about just $4 million from admittedly one group, for me, it comes down, had we had these solutions put forward at the time of your LTP deliberations, I suppose that would have been the opportune time for us to take you through and voice these concerns. You've put that through on your LTP to eliminate that fund, or however you put it, change the funding mechanism. Again, I make the point that you've also had opportunities through the variations of the original deed that we could have looked at to use and worked together, the three partners, constructively to provide a solution for Tarawera. Sorry, just off the top of my head right now, these two solutions I couldn't support right now. I'm more than happy to have a think about them further on, and I presume part of our annual planning process.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Just to be real clear, there's no commitment that's required. This is an opportunity for councillors to ask.
Just wanted to put it in the public arena, Madam Chair. The offer's on the table for those two solutions. Your call whether you take it up or not.
Thank you. So opportunity for questions. You're welcome to give feedback now, but just to be very clear.
Would we not have to put them into our annual plan? Would we have to consult, or we can choose?
Just to be very clear, we will have a discussion after as a council and decide how we wish to respond to this, and then we will bring it also back to a formal meeting of a committee or council so that our community can see the progress on this journey as well. So no commitment yet. We'll take this on board. It's the first time we've had an opportunity to have this put forward to us in a formal manner, which we appreciate. So we will need to have further discussions.
Your Worship, we're just inviting you to participate in conversations. That's all we're asking at this point in time. But, time is of the essence, as Councillor Winters has said.
Yeah, we do appreciate that. I'll just check see if Fiona had any further.
Yes, thank you. Just to clarify, standards for effluent disposal have been changing over the years. So there are modern standards. There are standards that effluent disposal has to meet. And that's what we do when we upgrade our plans. They're national standards. The Regional Council is not responsible for reticulation. It is the District Council's responsibility. Each and every long-term plan that the Regional Council considers, there is funding requests for reticulation. And then the last one, they were declined. There was a request from Rotorua Lakes Council, there were requests from Lake Tarawera residents. They were declined. They were declined because the Regional Council, like other councils, is looking at its rates increases and trying to keep them to a minimum. The next opportunity will be with that water quality funding policy that Council required in its last long-term plan. Before Council can look at that, local waters done well has to be implemented. There could be extensive changes to who owns assets in this region, so that was what was required by the Regional Council. But to be very clear on who is responsible for what, Rotorua Lakes Council is responsible for reticulation, and I recognise this is a very difficult decision for you, and it's a very difficult decision for the people in that community because of affordability issues.
Thank you very much, and we do appreciate your view on that. Is it also the Bay of Plenty Regional Council's responsibility to ensure the water quality of our lakes, rivers and streams? Which is why a reticulation scheme is needed. So we will continue to work in partnership on this, because whether we're talking about the why or the how much it's going to cost, ultimately we both have outcomes that we need to achieve for our community, not just now but for future generations as well, and in the most affordable and efficient way that we can do so. I might just hand over to our Chief Executive, Andrew, to provide a few comments and perhaps ask some questions as well. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of technical questions which I'm sure I'll be asked, so I might as well ask here. First one is, we've talked about this figure of $4 million. My understanding is that is not a figure that the Regional Council has endorsed as a constraint. So, for example, it could be more, it could be less. That's not a fixed figure. Is that the right understanding from a Regional Council point of view?
Or is it a starting point, I suppose, is the question in the discussions, is there flexibility?
So it's rates neutral to the residents of Rotorua. So based on how much the Council's lakes restoration rate declines over the next 2 years, it's around $4 million that is available.
So just to clarify, it's a product of the quantum of reduction in rates in the Rotorua Lakes targeted catchment for the Bay of Plenty Regional Council?
Yes.
And so if you expanded that period of time, the quantum would increase?
So Councillor Winters talked about $31 million over the 10-year period in terms of the decline for Rotorua residents. I thank you. In terms of the previous decisions by the Regional Council.
Understand. Okay. All I'm hearing is there might be, it's not necessarily only 4 million, or it could be less, it could be more. It's subject to a discussion, perhaps, which officers can pick up subsequent to council decisions. Is that?
Yes, happy to, Andrew.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then the second question was, obviously, the next steps for Rotorua Lakes Council is to go through our annual plan deliberations, and then, based on those decisions, only the second of the offers that Regional Council have put on the table is only applicable in the case that Rotorua Lakes Council makes a decision to increase. All right. So regardless,
It's still a loan at the end of the day, and you would have to find some way of paying it back.
understand. Okay, understand that. And then the last point was just around timing. So we'll work with you to understand the exact decision dates and make sure our processes align. Thank you.
Thank you. We're getting nods there. Thank you. Councillor Waru.
Oh no, I just wanted to know, are we going to be talking about Utuhine as well before our meeting finishes?
That's what we plan to do.
Thank you. We have 15...
No, our staff are going to present on to Utuhine and also Te Ruapeka.
Apologies. We have 15 minutes remaining in the allocated time. If we do need to go over, I suggest only slightly, but we'll take one more question on this topic from Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. Just a point of clarification again on the $4 million loan that's proposed. You stated that it's 2 years interest-free, but if we chose to pay it back in 10 years, the next 8 years, what would you charge us?
I think those are the discussions that we can have on what we might like. We'll ask our team to do some financial modelling on that as well, so know what we're talking about, and then we'll we'll get to a position where we can have some very clear options if that's what Council wishes to discuss. Your
Worship, can I just say and reassure our Rotorua colleagues that our colleagues at the Regional Council table are incredibly supportive of Rotorua. They acknowledge the conundrum that you're in, and totally man for man, woman to woman, they want to help you in any way they can. So we're speaking on behalf of our colleagues at Regional Council. That's why we're here today.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate that.
Yeah, tēnā koe te mare kura, me koutou hoki ngā memo te kaunihera. Me ngā memo te hapuri hoki hena, me ngā kaimahi kei te mihi ata ki a koutou. To avoid being seen as a mere tickle on the side here listening to the conversations, I am here in support of my colleagues, obviously, but also just to alert the fact that the question for me has always been, is the iwi voice in this particular space as we progress things forward. I know that we do have protesters out there, and I've got no issues with that. They will say do what they need to do. But there's also haukainga who live out there who actually charge in large land estates and corporations that haven't yet, from my understanding, their voice hasn't appeared in this particular conversation anywhere. As I know, it may have, but I haven't heard. So to be quite transparent about it, I am working with some of those to try and find out what is the voice from the haukainga, from those land trusts and the corporations, from those people who have lived the culture out there all these times. They're quite silent at the moment. I don't want it to get clouded, in my own sense, by others out there, be they the ratepayers of Tarawera or be they the protesters. That voice needs to be heard at some point. So I just want to be transparent about the fact that I am working in that space quietly behind the scenes, and maybe some point bring that to the table. Needless to say that I don't see any major opposition for them. They want a solution, and they want it done. And because they care about the lakes, and there's no doubt in their mind that things aren't all hunky-dory in terms of the lake itself, in terms of the environmental impacts and so on. So it's always going to be very much clearly on their radar around the cultural setting of the lake and the environmental issues going intergenerationally. So just wanted to put it on the table that I'm not necessarily silent. I'll leave it to my illustrious colleagues over here to answer the technical details. But in the context of the relationships with iwi, I want to make sure that that's solid and transparent as well. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, and of course an important partner as well. We'll move on now to the final points of discussion.
Well, we've got two leading members of our staff here with regards catchments. So
slides for this meeting.
we haven't.
Okay,
this
good.
is just
I
a
had a
general
receipt
conversation, knowing that it's a very high level of interest amongst you here in Rotorua. So can I pass over to Chris, and no doubt you'll touch on the meeting you had with Stavros and the RLC team earlier in the week. And Helen, feel free to jump in also.
Thank you, and I'm just completely unprepared for this, so we're gonna do our best, Stavros. So Stavros' team and our team, including I think there were 5 general managers, went for a bit of a field trip on Monday. We went around the Utahina catchment. We could have probably spent all day out there, but we squeezed in most of the morning, looked at Linton Park and the detention bund there. Great job you've done there, by the way. And looked at some of the works that we do together on the Mangakakehi and the other tributaries. So, and we also looked at the river mouth and had a quick look at the bay there, the Te Ruapeka Bay, which has been a topic of conversation for some time. So I'll probably let Helen talk about the bay, but in terms of the Utahina, the catchment, we really want to work in a much more collaborative way going forward, and Stavros, you'll jump in here if you feel like it. But I think we see stormwater management, which of course is a city council function, and flood management, when we're in a river scheme, which we are here in Rotorua, as two sides of the same coin. So we're working forward on that principle, and it's early days yet, but we're already working together as staff with your parks team around trying to reduce the threats of rivers when they get angry. So, and the Utahina has several tributaries that come under that classification. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us yet, but I just wanted to let councillors here know that we're working in that way going forward. We'll probably set up a senior staff working group that will focus specifically on the Utahina, but you're also aware that we're working together on the Nongataha following the event that happened in 2018 there. And there's work to do on that, and these things are never simple, and the devil's in the detail normally around who's going to pay for the protection that we need. So Councillor Winters and I have just come from a Kaituna advisory group meeting where we invite ratepayers, and some of your staff were there as well, and we just had that at our offices. So the work is going well. The upper Kaituna, which is what we call the lakes catchments, is prioritised. I think 40% of our work goes on in the upper part, and we have local ratepayers involved there as well. So unless, Stavros, you wanted to add to that, we could talk about.
Just very briefly, firstly, a big thank you to Chris and his team. That's, well, I think we had the opportunity on Monday to share views and options for our joint responsibilities as our elected members will recall. I did give you a presentation about the outcomes of our comprehensive stormwater concerns a few days ago. And one of the important things that highlighted by the commissioners is that both parties, Rotorua Lakes Council and the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, have some unique functions and responsibilities. And there is no question that the best outcome is a full collaboration for those functions to be aligned and work for us to work together. So I think the site visit you had on Monday aimed to get us all on the same path. And again, I'm grateful for Chris and the team that helped in that direction, and we'll do a lot more work in that direction going forward. So thank you very much.
And we appreciate the efforts of yourself and JP Gaston, who was there as well. There are many elements to managing catchments like that. Some of those are regulatory, and that's kind of outside my area, but some of them are operational, and that's where we will start the conversation from, I think, and then we'll move into the planning side of things. But we're also very well aware that there's a comprehensive stormwater consent. There will be a requirement to have catchment management plans for Utahina, also Nongataha, and we would like to be involved in those so that we make sure the community speaks with one voice to one agency, rather than have to have a conversation with Lakes Council, then a conversation with Regional Council, with what to them is essentially the same conversation. So we would like to make it easier for our customers if we can. So we appreciate the ability to do that. The other topic was Te Ruapeka Bay, and I think...
I'll just check if Andrew has any further comments on the Utahina Upper Kaitona catchment.
Look, I'm nowhere near as versed in the policy speak as you folks, but I think if we just take the customer view, for us it's crucial, because we're in a caldera, and you'll understand this very well, that if the responsibility to hold back and detain stormwater falls on private developers rather than the Utahina stream into the lake, then that is cost. That's cost that developers see, and that's cost that holds back development of houses and all sorts of aspirations of the people of Rotorua. So I think at the really elemental level, putting aside the regulatory versus the operational side, I think as long as we're everyone around this table is working towards the same outcome, which is that the cost of development in Rotorua is lowered, specifically by obligations to hold back stormwater, then I think we're all working in the same direction. If not, then I think we need to have a really robust conversation about it straight up, because if some of the consequences are that we are talking about managed retreat from places like Ohinamutu, I've got very clear directions from council that that's unacceptable. So just want to cut through a lot of the words to say that, and if there's no disagreement to that, we'll probably move on.
Okay, just checking, Helen, sorry, did you have anything on this matter? Oh, that you wanted
just
to
Ruapeka.
Okay, we'll go to that now then.
Could I just respond briefly to that? I don't think that we've really covered that to that extent in our little trip on Monday. The cost of development and trying to reduce that cost, we haven't had that conversation yet. So, and I suspect I would need other people in the room other than me, because that's not in my wheelhouse. Or yeah,
that's fine. But I do hear no objections from your councillors, which is great.
Many more discussions yet to come on that, but thank you. Glad to hear that there will be a senior staff working group set up on this. And so we'll move to Helen for the Ruapeka.
Kia ora koutou. So without wanting to give you all a history lecture about this particular kaupapa, in about 2019, I worked with it would have been 2018, went to maternity leave, I worked with the Ohanamotu working group to look at, which was a Rotorua Lakes Council working group in Ohanamotu, to look at the potential of reconnecting Lake Rotorua with Te Ruapeka, because it's blocked up effectively. So it used to be just a popular bathing site and have amazing cultural values associated with that, but because of some reclaimed area for car parking down there that's interrupted the flow of sediment from the Utahina, it's accumulated on that and blocked it up. So there was a desire from the community to restore the balance of Nora and Tapu in there and reconnect the lake with the bay. And just jump in, Councillor Waru, if I'm getting any of this wrong, and by basically removing sediment. So we drafted I drafted a consent application for them. We got Mahaidi Kirby to do a cultural values assessment of that particular activity, so whether there was support in the local, in Ohanamotu for it. And we also got GNS to fly a drone with heat sensing equipment on it to understand what the potential effects of removing that sediment would be in terms of health and safety effects, effectively. And what made this die in the water then, and this was a mutual decision between me and the working group, was that GNS said you've got boiling point temperatures at less than a metre below the surface in that sediment. You cannot, if you anthropogenic removal of sediment, so sediment removal with a digger, is pretty much instant, right? But you've got the accretion over time of the sediment there. So so the effects of that are less instant. If you go on with the digger, remove it, you could have geysering, steam, blocking vision, and health and safety risks for the community and for the people driving the digger, and there's no way to understand those or to mitigate them. That was the GNS advice. So we made a decision at that time to park that project. But of course it's still bubbling away, and now there's renewed. We're very clear that this has to be community-led, so it has to be led from Mohinemutu and not the councils coming in there and dredging sediment or removing it. So it has to be community-led. So there's a new effort, a revised effort to look at removing the sediment there, led by Mokanui, Rangikingi and Fred Club. And they are looking at a methodology methodologies that they could do it while protecting the health and safety of everybody. So they've asked for letters. I know they presented at one of your council meetings recently. I heard them, and they've met with me also and Councillor White. And they've asked for letters of support from both councils, and I've drafted something for them and sort of said we definitely support your kaupapa here. We want to help you do it. I've offered to refly the heat sensing drones and just to support the project. So with a bit of luck they can find a suitable solution that just mitigates those health and safety concerns, but that has to be, front of mind and the fundamental concern. But they're working through it and we're keen to support them. So that's where we're at.
Thank you very much for those updates on further key issues. We'll hand it over to Te Taru to provide further comments, and then we'll just probably do 5 minutes of final questions and wrap up. Thank you, Te Taru.
Thank you, Worship Mayor. Yeah, Helen has pretty much put it out there quite succinctly, but there's another group that has been involved in conversations, as Councillor Wadu would know, and they have indicated that they wish to put an option on the table as well. Having said that, you've got two groups from Mohinemutu sort of not battling it out, but coming up with different options for this. That's right. So you're getting those sorts of tensions, and there's one across the table already that's been considered. The other group needs to probably put something together, as was invited to them to do so. When I had an informal meeting up with them at their local meeting area, I won't define where that is, but and looking forward to receiving what they might be saying as well about a solution. The reality is that people are observing, this is a very culturally sensitive area, very one that Mohinemutu resident Ngāti Whakaue want to actually bring back to life. They're also witnessing what's happening externally to that. And the fear is that the blowouts and everywhere else around Mohinemutu might start occurring and increasing, including under the St. Face and into the Urupa over the Iruika and so forth. And therefore the safety of community is also now at risk. So they're looking at it from that perspective as well. So this is a big issue. And there's already a particular option on the table that's been investigated, and we'll await the Councillor Wadu, what might be forwarded from the other party as well. And the tension really should be around. There's got to be a solution here for this, and can we get together on that particular system? But at the moment, as Helen has said, there's already an option on the table to be considered. So I'll leave that there as it stands.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Look, what we might do, because I'm mindful of time and commitments, other commitments of people. We'll wrap up now, and if there are any questions, councillors, please feel free to ask the staff now. But what we'd also do is I invite you to send me your questions, and then we can have them responded to either and by email, and then also in a committee of infrastructure and environment. So we will end this workshop now, and what I'd like to do is, Councillor White, would you like to close our hui with the karakia? Amen. Thank you very much, everyone. I declare this meeting closed, and we thank the Regional Council.